Let's take a look at some information charts on ZRX for Brave New Coin. The token for ZRX is ZRX. ZRX is a DEX protocol. Matcha has been their baby, much like Oasis's makers. DApp, Matcha has taken the forefront for the ZRX protocol DApp side of things. Originally, ZRX was created as sort of an open developer protocol. You could use the protocol for your own DEX. Eventually, the DEXs that did that, most of them have either fallen by the wayside or forked off and attempted to make their own versions of things, some of which I don't think even exist anymore. But the case for a long time, and the continued problem for ZRX is the protocol is great, works great, an essential part of DeFi. The token, I don't think they know what the token is supposed to be yet. Doesn't know what it wants to be when it grows up. Still in a fact-finding phase. They have staking, they have governance. Staking component is kind of shut off at the moment because fees are shut off. The governance component is never going to move the needle for most people. And like I already said, if you use ZRX protocol or used it as a DEX and didn't like what they were doing, you could just fork off and do your own thing. So there's kind of no consequences there, aside from maybe brand management. I don't know, but it hasn't seemed to really played a big role in much of anything for the protocol, the token that is. And Matcha is an amazing DEX by all accounts. It looks great. The UI is great. Functionality is excellent. Has limit orders for certain pairs. Has everything you'd want in the DEX or the centralized exchange experience on a DEX. Has that Robin Hoodie feel to it as far as the UI is concerned. So Matcha is great, but the token itself doesn't play a role in any of this. You don't need the token to trade here. You don't use the token in any way. And if we look at some stats for the past year, for the exchange side of things, volumes are certainly not exploding, but they're much better than they were many months ago, right? When DeFi kind of took off in January 2021, all that volume that came in has stayed and sustained over the past year. Most of the volume is through the API, as well as Matcha and 1inch as well. DEX aggregators sort of aggregating everything. Aggregators eating the world. Most of the volume is done on the version 4, V4 there. And you can see active traders even is sustaining and isn't waning. And if anything, they hit an all-time high in active traders the end of October. So the protocol is in no risk of just disappearing. The protocol is excellent. People love it. It's the token that, like much of DeFi, is just this other thing that doesn't play a role in the excellence of the protocol. Here's the staking component. Protocol fees pause for the next 6 weeks based on a governance vote. Looks like probably because ETH fees are crazy right now. And I think based on what I'm seeing here, that just means no rewards for the staking side of things. And eventually the ZRX protocol wants to go fully decentralized. That's kind of the dream for everybody. Let's raise a bunch of money for us, develop the protocol, give it to everybody else, hopefully pay them. Some protocols do this, some don't. But the protocol is going to be fine at the end of the day. It's where does the money go? Who gets the money? That's always the problem. The decentralization aspect is almost the easy part, but determining who gets paid for what is the people problem. That's much more hard to navigate for a decentralized protocol. Harder to navigate for a decentralized protocol. Here's just another way of looking at staking rewards. I like this because I can look at everything at once. This is not only worse than 1%, it's nothing, it's 0%. So you're better off lending ZRX at this point. You're better off lending stablecoins at this point. So you're not buying the token for staking purposes currently. And just generally, the price hasn't really cared one way or the other about any of this. It doesn't care about volume, users, doesn't care about staking. It's just kind of marketing and PR use case stuff that has not mattered for price. As far as TVL is concerned, currently at around 89 million. I believe this TVL is calculated based on the staking. So there are still people staking, even though they're not really getting any reward out of it. And if we look at the DEX volume across the board, for today, UniSushi 1inch curve at the top there, ZRX API. Matcha's probably down here somewhere. Matcha, there it is. ZRX 1inch, Paraswap, Balancer, Bancor. So ZRX is definitely not a big slice of this pie generally on any given day, but it does play a role as an aggregator for people who don't want to use Sushi, Uni, or 1inch even for whatever reason. Everyone would rather use an aggregator. Matcha doesn't have a token. I don't think they've necessarily talked about making a token. I've seen rumblings of MetaMask getting a token. At this point, give everybody a token, give everybody an NFT, give everybody a stable coin. Just let everybody do everything, because why not? Let the market decide. There are obviously regulatory and legal issues with that, but if Matcha were to make a token, that again puts the ZRX token into question. Like, why does this thing exist? What is it for? What can you do with it? It's tough to answer any of those questions. On a monthly basis, it is in the yellow section here. So not a major role, but definitely plays a role in total volume on any given day, week, or month. If we look at the token on-chain stats, average transaction volume is kind of rising with price, rising with ETH fees. Nothing too crazy there. And transaction counts are down significantly since February 2021. Small rise here recently, but this is not a bullish picture for anything. You don't want to see just zero activity on chain. But again, there's no reason to move it around if there's nothing to do with it. So it's, again, kind of like, why does this thing even exist? Active addresses down to all-time lows effectively, down here at around 500 per day. NVT rising. NVT is a measure of, or an inverse measure of economic utility relative to price. So if NVT is rising, that says market cap is rising faster than on-chain activity, which generally isn't sustainably bullish. It can be bullish in a sector bull market, but eventually that'll catch up with any coin. And it's definitely not bullish to see active addresses just plummet here like that over the past few months. MVRV is another one kind of similar to NVT. Looks at market cap versus on-chain activity. For most coins, the highs in price have correlated to highs in MVRV, specifically around the 2x multiple. In 2018, this was definitely the case. We hit the 2x multiple. Market cap was 2 times greater than on-chain activity, 2.5, and that was the top. Most recently, we went to 1.6 and then kept going in price. MVRV pulled back. We saw this a lot with DeFi stuff earlier this year. Kind of a bearish divergence there. But currently, MVRV is around 1. And so if this token does move north, I would watch for MVRV. What does it look like at 1.5? Does it get to 2? What does it look like at 2.5? Because it's very likely you will see the top or close to the top around when MVRV hits 1.5 there. ZRX worldwide Google trends past 5 years. ZRX is like a bike term or something, right? It's a radio station. There's all sorts of other stuff that's not crypto, but just looking at the Google trends here, these have correlated quite nicely with all-time highs in price. So currently we're just at the baseline, nothing too crazy going on there. If not all-time highs in price, then local highs in price. So if price does make a run again, I would watch for Google trends to spike up there. And what you don't want to see is a massive spike in Google trends early, because it's typically an indicator that the top is in. If we look at Shiba, and keep bringing this one up because it's so obvious, past year, if you look at what happened here with price relative to Google trends, how that cooled off or continues to cool off, that correlates rather nicely with price. If we look at ZRX on the technicals, we have the 5200 EMAs here, VPVR, volume, RSI, yearly pivots, and I added fibs as well here. Now, ZRX should do well, not on its own volition, but because of DeFi doing well in general. You could argue ascending triangle, WO bottom, all sorts of stuff that doesn't necessarily match anything, but it did survive the drop. The MAs reset, and it is on the bullish side of both of those MAs now with a bullish golden cross. So it is likely this thing continues to run at least a little bit until everything starts to roll over, probably towards the beginning of next year, 2022. If I'm wrong, there's VPVR support at 80 cents and a big support at 32 cents. Historically, that's where most of that consolidation occurred. Not a ton of volume yet here. RSI doesn't really help you either. The other thing is, if this does actually make new all-time highs, one thing to watch for is the fibs. So right now it's at the 50% retracement of the previous range. The next stop would be local high retest. Then after that, it's the 1618 to the 2 measured move, which is around $4 USD. On the cloud, it actually popped up above the cloud this week for the first time since April, May. And so the cloud is telling you now is a better time than the past couple months to be long or open along based on trend. So something to watch for. towards the end of the year is if this thing rolls over into the cloud like it did at the end of May. All of February to May, basically, it was just sideways, nothing. Then it rolled over. That's what you don't want to see, obviously. Here, you want to see this continue its journey to local high retest. Against BTC, it looks like a mess, much like a lot of stuff does. It's definitely below the previous range, below VPVR. There's no yearly pivot support. There's no bull divs. RSI isn't in mega oversold territory. Trend metrics are bearish. I think this thing just flaps around like a dead fish down here for a while longer. And then out of the blue one day is going to surprisingly just hit the top of the range and then continue its descent back to the bottom of the range. I don't think this thing has any life in it on its own against BTC. This would just be a rotation play, most likely. But in reality, this really hasn't been bullish kind of since launch in 2018. Just kind of languished down here in the range. And against ETH, it kind of looks worse. It also, same stuff, it's bearish. It's got no support. It's at all-time lows. It doesn't have a bull div just yet. There's really no fundamental reason to hold ZRX over ETH. So that it makes sense that price is collapsing how it's collapsing. Previously, I said there was a building bull div here that ended up not playing out. Falling wedge didn't play out. Nothing mattered here. It's all just fundamentals really that matter. ETH is clearly a major player in crypto, whereas ZRX is struggling to find a purpose and use case. So if you're buying lows here, I'd just continue to prepare for some pain. But at the same time, don't be surprised if you randomly see this up towards the end of the cycle against both BTC and ETH. Last, I'll just mention the EPTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Technique Capital and Enzyme Finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM performance, allocation, all the vaults I'm in here on Yearn, Comp, and Aave. You can see we're holding a small amount of ZRX here. And you can also see the trades and the trade setup down below. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.